The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Welcome to The Timeline, a Phoenix Suns podcast. My name is Mike, here with Sam as always. Sam, how are you doing?
Good. Happy to be back. Happy to be back for part 2 of our off-season breakdown. Well, I don't know. A lot of people listened to our episode last week, so I think that's a good indication, Mike, that we had a decent idea of what to do here to kick off the offseason. A lot of people are interested in DeAndre Ayton and Chris Paul. And look, transaction talk in general.
Before we started recording here, I called them the opposite of the internal development series. It's like an external development series. We're talking about trading these guys, and people are more interested in that than how they could improve last offseason. I shouldn't say that. The internal development episodes did very well last year as well, in the previous year. But it is an interesting thing to talk about because we are at the point with the Suns where they traded so many players away. And, you know, we know who's going to be on the team for sure in 2 guys. And outside of that, it's about building the best team around them. And so, of course, the first things we have to tackle is potential trades, especially because trades can start now. Like the Suns could make a trade tomorrow. And because any team that's out of the playoffs, it's open season. You can make trades at that point.
They won't. They
Probably
could,
not,
but they
yeah.
won't. So, you know, if this is your first NBA offseason following the team, don't worry, they won't. But yes, technically they could.
Yeah, they could. And, you know, obviously I think the best case is to wait for every team to be out of it, just in case there's something you can get from one of the other teams, Denver, you know, Boston or Miami. By the time you listen to this episode, it'll just be 2 teams left. We're recording this right before Game 7. Excited to watch that.
Super excited, yeah.
Before we started recording, I learned that I broke some news directly to you about one guy who no longer looms prominently over the Phoenix Suns, and that's Nick Nurse, who was hired by the Philadelphia 76ers. You missed that news today.
So can I defend myself here? Yes.
Of course.
I'm first of all, I'm mad that we didn't get that reaction on the mic because that would have been fun. I was actually shocked. I had no idea that Nick Nurse was hired by the Sixers. This was like 6 hours ago. Mm-hmm. I was driving all day. I was driving from my parents' house to my normal house. So that's part 1. But part 2 is I have not checked Twitter in the past, I would say 36 hours at this point, because some of these fucks don't know how to conduct themselves. And I'm talking about specifically, I have not watched the Succession finale yet. And some people, no, this is a real problem, okay? I feel like I have the right to rant about this. I use Twitter for basketball.
Right.
And I follow like 98% people for basketball reasons, right? David Stern basketball reasons.
Yeah.
It just so happens that a lot of these people, we share interest in TV shows and movies and whatever. And that's great. If you want to talk about this stuff, talk about it. But I had legitimate fear. There was fear in my heart and soul to go onto this app over the past 24 hours because I heard that people were spoiling the finale of Succession,
It's
which
true.
again, I still have not seen. I will watch it tomorrow.
True.
And by the way, Barry ended last night as well. That's another great show. I still have not seen the finale for that either. And I missed this news because 99% of people on Twitter are lovely. They want to talk about the Succession finale. They talk about it in vague terms. But the 1% of people ruin it for the rest of us. And so I missed this bombshell report. I had no idea. Now, you could just say, what if I just got my news from a traditional news source? What if I just got an ESPN notification to my phone like a normal person? But I don't want to do that. That's
Like
what I
an
use
old
Twitter
person.
for. Like an
Yeah.
old person. I don't want to do that. I just want to be able to open up my feed and reasonably look at basketball tweets. And if I see film or media or whatever else, that's fine, but just keep it vague, okay? There's probably like 3 people listening, if that, who this applies to you. But if this applies to you, please give people an opportunity to watch shows. Don't spoil shows on social media. This is not a show. We're not talking about something that came out 5 years ago. We're talking about a show that premiered last night. The series finale was last night. Let me watch it in peace. Okay, I've said my piece. Nick Nurse is a Sixer. That's my other reaction to that is cool. I didn't want him that much anyway, Mike.
Am I tempted to spoil it for you right now?
Live on the pod, I would actually kill you if if you did.
I won't. I liked it. I'll say that. But yeah, I mean, it's a funny thing with Nick Nurse. You know, I had mixed feelings about hiring him, and when it was reported, which I don't think we've even talked since then, but when it was reported that he withdrew himself from the race for the Bucks coach, which, by the way, I questioned the veracity of that report. But when that was reported, I thought, okay, well, it's got to be between the Suns and the 76ers at the very least. I assumed the Suns. I kind of think, no hate to the 76ers. I kind of think of the Suns' job as a better job than the 76ers, but,
I would agree.
Nick Nurse is supposedly close with Daryl Morey. So, if that's something that tips a cap or tips the scales in that direction, then it does, and he ended up there. Where we stand as Suns fans, where the Suns stand, is just kind of, it's an interesting place to be. We got Doc Rivers still out there. You and I have the theory that he's just out there to make every other candidate look a little bit better.
Yep.
Kevin Young, I think the leader in the clubhouse at this point.
Yep.
Bill Simmons is staking his whole reputation on Kevin Young being the coach. Jordi Fernandez, who I have heard the Suns are taking him seriously as a candidate. This is not, this is not something that people that work for the Suns think is fake. The interest in Jordi is real. So I've heard that. Charles Lee, Darko Rajakovic, Frank Vogel are also out there. I think the thing that bothers me about all of this is I think we're at the point where you fired Monty Williams when the season ended within 48 hours. And we're at the point where I don't think you could definitively say that you've hired somebody better than Monty Williams if you hire any of these guys. It's not to say that one of the assistant coaches can't be better, but you don't have any evidence that they will be. You're doing it just based on what you believe.
Sure. But couldn't we say that at the time of his firing as well?
I think if you hired Nick Nurse, you have a lot of evidence there. He won a championship. He's done a lot of things in the playoffs that Monty Williams is either unwilling or incapable of doing. You can make the case there at the very least.
Vogel,
and then, of course, Ty Lue
has
was
won a
immediately
championship.
recorded. Yeah, Frank Vogel's there too, but I think it's just different kind of guys out there. Ty Lue, I think, is of course the guy they initially reported as the number one option for the Suns. That's the one that the Suns wanted the most. That it appears they have no chance of getting.
Sure.
So those two guys, you make a case easy. Outside of that, I think you're struggling.
I hear what you're saying, but for me, nothing about the process has changed between pre-Nurse being hired by the Sixers and post-Nurse being hired by the Sixers. My understanding was we were on the same page in that we don't like him that much. Like, to an extent, screw all of the outside noise. Who cares? Who cares about the optics of this signing? I feel like we spend a little bit too much time thinking about the optics of this signing. Grab the guy who you think is going to be the best coach. That's all that matters. If that's Kevin Young, you need to sell that vision, that message to Matt Ishbia. But between all of the remaining candidates that we have on the board now, with the exception of Frank Vogel and Doc Rivers, I suppose, they're basically all of these assistants where they don't have technically that championship experience. So they all must have some assets going for them, but you need to be able to sell those to Ishbia.
Yeah, people rarely bring up the fact that Doc Rivers won a championship as a coach as well, huh? It's just one of those things you can bring up with Vogel, you bring up with Nurse. But Doc, it was 15 years ago, to be fair. That's a pretty long time ago. But he did win the championship as well. Yeah, it is a weird place, I think, for the Suns to be in, where I think if you're unhappy with the process, if you're unhappy with the results, that's fair. If you choose to be optimistic, you could be right as well. Like, there's really no wrong answer here. That's the difficulty with the we don't know for sure that they're hiring an assistant coach, but if I had to bet any money on anything, it would be Kevin Young at this point, right? That's just what we're looking at. We're staring down the barrel of a Kevin Young administration on the Suns, right?
You said earlier that Bill Simmons is staking his reputation. I haven't heard him. I have heard him in multiple episodes basically say that it's going to be Kevin Young. Now, Bill has been wrong before, but given that he was the first guy to mention Ishbia's name before he placed a bid to buy the Suns, and then Ishbia later like came on his pod and everything, like I imagine there's a real connection there between those two guys. I don't really doubt it. To be honest, it feels like as close to a true insider report as we're going to get at this stage in the coaching search. So yeah, I mean, if you had to place money right now, like Kevin Young he's the front runner for sure. I don't know exactly what the odds are, where I'm setting the odds if I'm in Vegas, but it's Kevin Young at this point. Let's just assume, for better or worse, that's Book's guy. Like that's kind of all we really know about him, right? Is we don't know exactly what he handled.
Chris Paul seems to
behind
like
the scenes. Yeah, well, I don't know.
That might not matter to us, but it might matter to someone.
That might not matter. We've got another 50, 60 minutes of the pod to talk about whether that matters or not. But what matters to me is he's Book's guy, and that's where we're going to start with the Kevin Young conversation. That's what's going to initially dictate the narrative about that signing, is they decided to go away from Monty Williams, who, as far as I know, didn't have any direct struggles with Devin Booker in the locker room. I think it would be very dramatic to say he lost the locker room, but did maybe have some conflicts. In fact, literally did have some conflicts with multiple players in the Suns locker room.
DeAndre and Jay Crowder. Yeah.
Exactly. Those two guys.
Maybe so Chris Paul? I don't know.
The narrative then swings to the Suns decided to pivot to a little bit of a different direction, but keeping their associate head coach in place, promoting him to head coach, in order to kind of placate their two superstars. That would be where we start with the Kevin Young narrative if he is hired.
It's assuming Doc. I don't think they're going to hire Doc, so I'm just going to throw that off the table real quick. And so Frank Vogel is the only other like former head coach with experience left, and we haven't spent a lot of time talking about Frank Vogel. It's just not very exciting to me to hire this sort of defensive specialist coach for this team that I think one of the reasons that they want to move on from Monty Williams is to try to find a more modern offense. That's the word that keeps being used from what I've heard. And so that's why Frank Vogel's off the table. So you look at the other guys, Kevin Young, Jordi Fernandez, Charles Lee, Darko Rajakovic. We're looking at 4 assistant coaches, not a ton of experience, no head coaching experience at all. Some head coaching experience at the G League level from both Jordi and Young, at the very least, maybe even Lee and Darko, I'm not sure. But Booker likes one of them. And that's just kind of where the conversation might end. If you're, for example, if you're between Kevin Young and Jordi Fernandez, and for sure Devin Booker likes one of those guys, I understand why you'd pick him. I understand it. I don't necessarily think it's the right choice. Time will tell what the right choice is. As long as we have a group of guys that are committed to doing whatever this coach, even a first-time coach, is trying to do, then I think we'll probably be in a good place, at least in the short term. The long term is going to be an interesting discussion for this, and not something that we can be. There's not a lot of analysis we can go into on that because it's going to take years to find out what kind of impact this has on the Phoenix Suns franchise in the long term. But hiring the right guy could have a really great positive impact for years and years to come, and hiring the wrong guy could have a massive negative impact in the short and long term. So hopefully they get it right. I know they're doing a lot of interviews. It sounds like they're having a lot of conversations. I will say the more and more sort of propaganda pieces we see about Kevin Young, the more I feel like it's just coming. That it's just coming. That's what's going to happen.
I mean, to be honest, today we're recording on Memorial Day, so I didn't expect a news report today I was hoping. I was wondering, I was basically thinking to myself, okay, if it comes out today, it's because someone leaked it. But the Suns are not going to choose to come out with that news on a Monday morning.
But then the Nick Nurse news,
it's true. Do we know? Okay, again, I was totally out of the loop on the Nick Nurse news. Do we know where it came from? Did someone leak it?
Woj.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then has the team announced anything on their official social channel since then? That's what I would wonder about. Tomorrow morning, it would not surprise me if there was an announcement. On a Tuesday morning, anything goes. So we'll see. If we're back here in 24 hours, you guys know why.
Yeah. All right. That's it. Hopefully, this might be the last time we have to mention 5 different coaches' names, 6 different coaches' names on a podcast. The next time we record, I expect the Suns to have I think they're going to hire a coach this week. I don't know how soon it's going to come, but I don't think it's going to be that far from now. Maybe they make one last bid to try and figure out if they can get Ty Lue loose from the Clippers at all, and then from there, if not, hire Kevin Young at that point. And we'll see what happens. All right, so last week we spent a good hour, 20 minutes. I guess an hour. We had 20 minutes of coaches talk on that one too. Talking through this last year of DeAndre Ayton's career, and then a bunch of I think we ended up with like almost 20 fake trades for DeAndre Ayton.
At least 15.
With varying levels of seriousness to those trades, of course. And then we went on to the Patreon podcast and covered a bunch from people who listened as well that were also very, very good. If you're a patron, listen to that. If not, feel free to sign up. There's some good ones there.
I was proud of the fact, obviously, maybe you hated all of the trades, but I was proud of the fact that we got mostly positive feedback. We did not receive any death threats. I did not receive any death threats. I don't know about you, Mike. Might have to check your DMs.
I don't check those, yeah.
Yeah, you never know what lurks in there. I need to know. And so I check. But I didn't get any. So that was good. It felt like there was something, when you post 15 trades or throw out 15 ideas, it felt like for the most part there was something for everyone out there with regard to our DeAndre Ayton conversation. And if, by the way, for some reason you still haven't listened to that episode, I would say that is very much evergreen, or mostly evergreen. It has a longer shelf life than most basketball podcasts. You can still go back and listen, kind of pick our brains on some of those ideas. This is going to be an interesting conversation as we head towards the Chris Paul angle, because I think it diverges in a bunch of interesting ways from the Ayton conversation. At the center of it, it's very much the same conversation. $30 million of salary, not an ideal basketball fit. How do we move off it? But there are all these sorts of different angles and different challenges that are going to be specific to the Chris Paul conversation that should be fun to get into this week, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, the number one stat with Chris Paul, he's 38 years old. Will be 39 by the next playoffs. And that's the main thing with Chris Paul that it boils down to with the Suns, because if we're talking about prime Chris Paul, he's a great fit, obviously. But we're not. We're talking about this older Chris Paul who has, it's not just the Suns where he's been injured in the playoffs. His whole career, he's had injuries in the playoffs. And even if he wasn't, like if there was a chance that he would not be injured in the playoffs, I think he'd be okay. He'd be a good player for the Suns. But you could make the case that a point guard who needs the ball in his hands a lot in order to be effective is not the perfect fit with Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, being that the ideal scenario for those guys is to have a guy with a quick trigger that can shoot off ball, catch and shoot, can move around screens, is quick, maybe a good screener, and somebody who can hold their own defensively. Chris Paul, surprisingly good defensive year in his last year with the Suns, considering his age. But, he got injured boxing out. And the thing about Chris Paul, too, you hide him on guys in the playoffs because he's not the defender that he used to be. That means he's constantly trying to box out on guys that are much bigger, much stronger, and usually significantly younger than him, which is what leads to injuries like this. And it's a tough thing with Chris Paul where, if he's not a good fit on the Suns, is he a good fit elsewhere? Yeah, I think there's places that you can make the case he's a good fit in. And I think the question of, well, let's start here. What did you think about Chris Paul this last season and how he played? I know he was injured a lot, but what did you think?
I thought, basically, I often thought to myself, man, if we could pay this guy $15 or $20 million for what he's giving us right now, he is still a rock-solid, awesome NBA player in so many respects. And as a tone setter and his stability, there are so many aspects of his game which are still great. Even at age 38, it still makes you feel like, just in terms of a pure value perspective, Chris Paul could play a few more years. For the specific price of $30 million, he doesn't make any sense next to Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. He just doesn't. And just as evidence to what I was talking about in terms of his value, so like Chris Paul averaged 13.9 points, 8.9 assists per game this year, to only 1.9 turnovers, by the way. So still an awesome assist to turnover ratio. 1.5 steals. Yeah, he's not the switchable defender in terms of like being able to guard 1 through 5, but he still holds his own defensively, even at multiple positions, I would say. Maybe he becomes more of an issue in the playoffs. You need to hide him. But at no point did I really feel that he was a defensive liability, even at his age. He shot 38% from deep this year on 4.4 3-point attempts per game. By the way, that's his highest 3-point volume in his 3 seasons as a Sun. Yeah. It still wasn't enough for him to fit next to Booker and KD, again, in the ideal form. But he shot pretty well.
Let me tell you this one, just to add to that. There are, in the last season, so 22-23, there were 20 point guards who started 50 or more games and played at least 30 minutes per game. And of those 20 point guards, Chris Paul being one of them, only 2 of them shot less 3-point attempts per game than Chris Paul.
Yep.
Do you want to guess those 2 players? You'll never guess. I won't make you.
Sorry. 2 point guards. Yeah, just tell me.
Well, it's a kind of a funny thing. Dennis Schroeder and SGA, who both played with Chris Paul previously,
and on a successful team too.
Yeah, I would not good teams. Both of those guys are on good teams, but different types of players.
I would not have guessed those 2 guys, by the way. So thank you for having mercy on me. How about this one, which really blew my mind? Are you ready to put on your VORP hat, your advanced statistics?
Oh, sure.
We love advanced stats. VORP, value over replacement player, basketball's catch-all. Chris Paul ranked 41st in the NBA in VORP this season. DeAndre Ayton ranked 81st. And I think based on some of the trades that we came up with last week versus some of the ones you're probably going to hear this week, I'm just guessing for you. I don't know what any of your trades look like, but it's not going to necessarily feel like that based on just the trade value. You wouldn't
played,
think,
by the way, 14 more games, I think. Yeah, 14 more games. No,
yes.
10 more games, it looks like.
Yes. Yeah. But you wouldn't think that we're dealing with a guy who in this stat literally ranked 41st in the NBA in this advanced stat. Here are some names who Chris Paul was ahead of in VORP this season. Paul George, Bam Adebayo, Jaylen Brown, Anthony Edwards, Jamal Murray, Draymond Green. Many, many, many more guys besides that, but you get the point.
Yeah, there's a difference between just being able to convince yourself that a player will be better in DeAndre Ayton. You'll never get a better Chris Paul again, and every subsequent season, assuming there's more than one, for Chris Paul for the rest of his career will be worse than the last.
Sure, but let's just be very clear. So when you ask me what I thought about Chris Paul's play this season, sometimes like you go on social media, you see people kind of just say he just needs to retire, he's finished, he's cooked. That is bullshit.
Right.
He obviously has more left in the tank. The question is finding the right fit, finding a team at the right stage of kind of its basketball contention life cycle. That's going to be really important because it's getting hard to convince contending teams that Chris Paul fits on a contending team. That doesn't mean he doesn't fit anywhere. That doesn't mean he doesn't fit anywhere for some price point. That doesn't mean he's no longer an NBA player. He's absolutely an NBA player. By this metric, he was the 41st best NBA player last season. But there are all sorts of challenges.
Makes me kind of...
And most importantly, just to underline again, he just doesn't fit in an optimal way next to Booker and Durant. And that's the most important thing for us, and that's why I want to move off him.
Makes me kind of sad the way people talk about Chris Paul at this point. Just, it's tough to remember what it was like before Chris Paul and then after he was added. Much of the credit goes to Devin Booker and Monty Williams, I think, as well. But the extent to which Chris Paul was still like a superstar when he first got to the Suns was kind of insane. He was so good in his first year on the Suns. All of that Chris Paul stuff was there, including the fourth quarter magic, which existed for 2 seasons for him before he kind of lost it in this last season. And people just want to just get rid of him just because they're frustrated with where the team's at. But, I don't want to be like New Orleans. I don't want to be like the Clippers in the way they talk about Chris Paul. It's kind of pathetic when I see those fans. Clippers fans in particular. When I see Clippers fans talk about Chris Paul, it's pathetic. I think they're shameful in the way that they talk about him. And I don't want to be that fan base. I want to be the fan base that actually appreciates what these guys gave, even if it means that they had to move on at some point. It's okay. That's what happens. It's the life cycle of the NBA. Very, very few players are capable of staying on the same team the entire time. Just look at Tony Parker in a Charlotte jersey, for example. It's just weird things tend to happen in the NBA, so it's okay when they move on. Don't be a weirdo is what I mean. But we still are going to talk through trades, and I think, let me ask you this. Do you think the Suns hiring Kevin Young makes it more likely they keep Chris Paul than if they hired somebody that wasn't on the team last year?
That's a really interesting question. Maybe.
Yeah, I think it might. I think it might.
Not a satisfying answer. Well, I wanted to ask you just at some point, one of the main places where these two conversations diverge, I feel like we approached the Ayton episode with this idea of, he's getting traded. Yeah. 100% he's getting traded.
Right.
And it just doesn't feel that way with Chris Paul.
No, but I guess... Did you feel more that way before you started researching trades?
Did I feel more which way?
I thought Chris Paul will probably be traded. And then I started making fake trades and I thought, oh, you know what? Maybe they'll keep him.
Okay. But that's what I want to ask you. Do you think, so there's this uncertainty, right? Let's start there. There's this uncertainty about Chris Paul. We've even seen rumors already that Chris Paul could be the starting point guard on opening day next year. Does that uncertainty come from the Suns truly valuing him?
Right.
And valuing that continuity, in which case I think your theory there about maybe if they hire Kevin Young, maybe they still do value continuity a little bit. Maybe that tracks. Or does that uncertainty come from they're going to scan the field and they're going to realize, oh, crap, he doesn't have any value. There is no team that's going to take him. Maybe I'm being a little dramatic because if you guys listen ahead, we're going to go through all the teams that maybe do.
Yeah. Right.
But where do we think that comes from?
26 minutes into the episode, I'm going to drop, I don't know, maybe somewhat of a hot take question at the very least. Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, good leaders? Are we sure they're good leaders?
What type of leader?
The type of leader that Chris Paul is, as an example.
Are we sure Chris Paul is a good leader?
I'm pretty sure Chris Paul is a good leader. My question is, look, I think Devin Booker is maybe the best leadership quality Devin Booker has is a willingness to work extremely hard. When he's vocal on the court, it's usually because he's pissed at someone and he's screaming at them. Mm-hmm. And look, that's a type of leadership. It's not like a terrible type of leadership. It's a form of accountability, right? Everyone has to be accountable for the things that happen. Kevin Durant, not a traditional leader at any stop he's ever been. And I think there's a case, if you want to make a case for Chris Paul, it's that he's a longtime veteran that understands the NBA, has been around for a long time, has played with a bunch of types of different players. It can be a good person in the locker room to be on the same page as the coach and to help them coach the team, essentially. And I don't know that Devin Booker is that. I don't really think he is. I don't think we've really seen it. I think he's a good leader, but I think there is a case to be made that they need someone like Chris Paul as well. And if Chris Paul's gone, maybe they can find somebody else to do that. You know, it doesn't have to be a star. Not that Chris Paul is anymore. It can come from somebody like Jared Dudley was an example of that on previous teams. You know,
are you advocating for that? Is that your official bring back Dudley? Should we start the campaign?
I don't think he's an assistant coach now. He can be an assistant coach for sure.
To be honest, I forgot. I think there's value in what you're talking about, but to be honest, it's just not $30 million value, which is what Chris Paul's salary is.
Yeah, it's more like Udonis Haslem money. Is that what we're looking for here?
Yeah, maybe. By the way, we should mention, it would be remiss of us not to mention, before we get into all the trades, Chris Paul only has a partially guaranteed salary this upcoming season.
That's true.
Right? Mm-hmm. So if the key date to watch here is June 28th, which is actually like exactly a month from today, if the Suns decide to guarantee his deal for next season before that date, that is the deadline, then he will be making the $30 million. Or they would be able to trade him after that date for a salary that counts towards the cap as $30 million for some other team. Or they could decline or waive him before that date, a month from today, And then only $15 million would be going out to Chris Paul, but he wouldn't be playing for us. That is the option that they have ahead of them. And technically, it is a choice that they could make, right? If the Suns really, really wanted to save money as soon as possible, and they just felt that Chris Paul doesn't really have any inherent trade value, you weren't going to get valuable role players back for him, let's just wash our hands of the whole thing. Here's your $15 million. Be on your way. Shake his hand. Thank you for your contributions the past 3 seasons. They could do that. Personally,
they could also stretch that over a few seasons.
Yes, they could
to
do
try,
that as well.
Say if they wanted to trade Ayton and assign a trade for Fred VanVleet and then wanted the MLE instead of Chris Paul, the full MLE, there's a world where they can find a way to create that by waiving and stretching Chris Paul, potentially.
Personally, and then I'll ask your opinion on it as well, obviously, but based on the guy that I was just talking about, top 50 in the NBA and some advanced stat or whatever, still averaging 14 and 9, yes, injury history aside, the idea of paying a guy like that $15 million to not play for me doesn't sit right. And I really believe that there, even if you don't want to keep him necessarily, there is value out there for him that you could exchange. Yeah. So that is not the way that I would want to go. But it is a path. And it's a path towards clearing a lot of money pretty quickly. What do you think?
It's tough. It doesn't sit right with me either. You know, I think back to David, and our friend David, the 4-point play, what he wrote initially about the Chris Paul signing when it first happened, and the idea of this sort of deal that where they could potentially waive, or I'm sorry, they could just not guarantee his full contract for this year and then re-sign him at a lower amount. And at the very least, that would make me feel a little bit better if they, for example, signed him at a minimum deal, but he basically gets paid $18 million this year. You know, because the guaranteed $15 million he gets plus $3 million he got on the Suns. That would make me feel a little bit better, I would say, than any of this. But at this point with Chris Paul, if you're not trading him and utilizing the salary, what he makes doesn't really matter that much to the Suns because they're probably going to be a tax team no matter what. Maybe it'll matter if they get really close to the second apron.
It does matter because of exactly that reason.
But we haven't yet seen how that's going to even be a thing this season, or if it will, because we don't know if that's going to be. Well, the CBA might have supposedly some level of not everything going into effect the first year. And we haven't seen the final CBA yet, so we don't really know.
We'll see. I would rather avoid that. I'm still not really worried about the second apron at this point compared to some other teams, maybe some that we'll talk about that are more screwed than the Suns are. But that $179 million or whatever is the figure. That you're not supposed to be past that point next season. I would like to avoid that number if at all possible. And Chris Paul might play a part in that.
All right, you ready to trade Chris Paul?
I am very ready to do it. I have some sentimental feelings about it, but I think it's something that has to be done. And how many ideas did you whip up?
I think I have 8. One thing I want to say, shout out to the fans of Chris Paul that joined the Suns fandom when Chris Paul was traded to the Suns. I'm sorry if you're listening to this. I like a lot of you. I actually think a lot of the Chris Paul fans we got when Chris Paul was added to the Suns are just so basketball obsessed because they like Chris Paul, right? And when you're a Chris Paul fan, it's because you like that mental side of the game, the thinking about the game. And yes, I'm sorry if you're listening to this. We got to do it. You want me to go first? I think there's an obvious team to start with, one that we've already talked about.
Go for it.
The Clippers, right? I'm sure you have a Clippers trade here.
Absolutely.
I'm trying to be as realistic as possible in doing this. And so what that often means in figuring out trades from other teams, it is some version of they're giving us a bad contract back, maybe with one valuable piece with it to get Chris Paul. So what I did for the Clippers is Eric Gordon has a non-guaranteed amount for the 23-24 season. And I factored in the team opting into that money to trade Eric Gordon, where he makes a lot more money than he would make on the open market. It's like $19 million or $20 million or something like that. So I'm factoring in the options that I have, Eric Gordon opting in with the team opting in, and then using him to trade for Chris Paul, because I think that's the most realistic version of the Clippers trading for him. And there's two options, essentially. One, maybe less realistic and more exciting to me, which is Eric Gordon and Zubats. And then maybe a less fun one that maybe is more realistic, and that's Eric Gordon and Robert Covington.
Good Lord. Is that what we're dealing with?
I mean,
Gordon and you know what's so funny here?
What?
Because, yes, I have a Clippers trade as well. What's so funny is that in the Ayton episode, I was consistently, it felt like, I don't know about overvalue, undervalue, but I was giving us less than you were in those trades. You were throwing out
It's true.
some great trades for the Suns in the Ayton episode.
Right.
And here, you know what I have written on my sheet?
Can I guess?
Sure.
Is it like Zubats and Mann?
Zubats and who?
Terrence Mann?
No, I don't know if that's enough money. I started out Norm Powell and Zubats, which
Okay.
is just, are you telling me if we started the negotiation there, are you telling me there's no chance?
I think maybe you could convince them to go Eric Gordon and Batum.
You think if I start at Norm Powell and Zubats, which to me is like, that's two rock solid, can be top 6, 7 guys in my rotation, and you think we're going to land at Eric Gordon and Nick Batum?
I'm just trying to be as realistic as possible.
That's fine. I just want people to recognize that we're starting with a very big gap here in what we're valuing this guy at. I would be pretty sad with a Batum. I mean, I'll be honest. Batum and Eric Gordon, I would question why we're doing it at all.
Yeah.
It would be at that point for me. Could you give me Gordon and Zubats? That was one of yours, right?
Yeah.
I could settle for that.
Yeah. That's. I mean, it's not great. But if you end up trading DeAndre in for I don't know, a point guard.
Well, let's
Fred VanVleet, for example. Fred VanVleet.
Yeah, sure.
And then you fill out your starting lineup with Eric Gordon and Zubats. That's a pretty good starting lineup.
Let's just be clear to people again what we're looking for, because I think maybe we didn't as clearly define it as we did last week. Like last week, we were looking for what was it? Two playable
playoff players is how I
two playable
said it.
playoff players.
Yeah.
And then maybe some draft capital or whatever. In some instances, we tried to throw
extra
in picks
if you
for young
can.
players.
A young player, maybe. Yeah.
Whatever. For Chris Paul, it's basically the same concept, right? Like
I honestly, I was just trying to find what I thought was realistic. That not necessarily what I would do, just examples of what I thought maybe other teams might.
Well, okay, my ideal Chris Paul trade is similar to the Ayton trades. I think the overall total value is a little bit less, but I'm still looking for, can I take this one playoff player and turn him into 2 playoff players? That's what I'm looking for in a Chris Paul trade. Very simple calculation. 2 guys, maybe the $10 to $15 million salary range. I don't think you're going to get any young assets in a Chris Paul trade, whereas I think you could in a DeAndre Ayton trade. Who knows? Maybe a second-round pick or something down the line. But for the most part, that would surprise me. I'm just looking to see, can I get playoff role players for Chris Paul? And if we ended up with Eric Gordon and Nick Batum.
Those 2 guys can play in the playoffs. They did last year. They lost in the first round.
That's not exactly what I'm looking for, though, in fairness. I think the Zubats, what was the middle version of this trade? Zubats and Eric Gordon, I could settle for that.
Eric Gordon and Batum was the other one, and then Eric Gordon and Robert Covington was the bad version. But I think the example of Eric Gordon and Robert Covington was an example that I said the Clippers would for sure do this. Do you know what I mean? And I think the other ones, Eric Gordon and Zubats, I think there's a version of the Clippers where they go, no, we need Zubats. And we can just cut Eric Gordon, not deal with him at all. So the version of you traded for Eric Gordon, now you can use his salary along with something else to get a good player for your team next year in getting Chris Paul. That to me is a huge selling point for the Clippers, where I'm not sure they're going to trade guys without Eric Gordon for him because, I don't know, I just don't think they would, I guess. That's the best version of what I think is realistic for him from them. Not the best version for the Suns, of course, just something that I think they would actually do. And you'll see a theme with some of these because I think that's just where I'm at.
All right, well, let's cross the Clippers off the board and move on to the next team.
All right. Do you want a funny one or do you want to go next?
I'll go next.
Okay.
This one's going to come, I'm going to start in a place where tell me if this is out of left field for you. Because it might be. This might be totally out of left field. The San Antonio Spurs.
Oh,
Where is this in your?
no, nowhere. Are
In
you
your
assuming
calculus.
they're going to buy Chris Paul out? Or is that where we're at?
Not that they'd buy him out, but here's what I'm thinking. The San Antonio Spurs, some of you may know, have the number 1 pick in next year's draft. They
Yeah.
are widely, next month's draft, they are widely presumed to be taking Victor Wembanyama.
They are, yeah.
Who is going to be immediately their franchise centerpiece. And I think they are also, by the way, I mean, they went 22-60 last season, and they have a crap ton of cap space and all this. They're one of the only teams in the NBA in a position to maybe absorb some bad salary where other teams are not necessarily in that position. But I think there is a case to be made for a team like the San Antonio Spurs to put a competitive team around Victor Wembanyama
Right.
immediately.
Or
And
at the
I
very
think
least, a good example for him at a young age. A player like
Yes.
Chris Paul would be good for him.
To be the antithesis to a Houston Rockets, we're going to put Jalen Green
Yeah, right.
and Jabari
And
Smith
then add-
and
Kevin
Kevin Porter
Jr.
Jr.
to that,
on
yeah.
the same team. And good luck, guys. Figure it out. There are absolutely no one over the age of 24 on this team. Good luck. I think the Spurs are trying to do the opposite of that. And maybe it means they won't even be a playoff team immediately. Maybe they will. But I think there would potentially be some value for the Spurs. I mean, if you look at their roster right now, let's put it this way. They don't even have a competent point guard at the moment. They just don't.
No.
There would be value for them in a system point guard who, at the very least, even if he doesn't have a ton of on-ball value left, could get them into some sets and make sure Wembanyama gets the ball where he likes it. And I can't think of many better players to do that than Chris Paul. I don't
He
know
also
if they have.
supposedly does bed checks at hotels where he makes sure that you're in by curfew.
Chris Paul does?
Supposedly.
That sounds wonderful.
It sounds Spursian, I think.
Chris Paul and Greg Popovich, just in my mind,
They're practically
Feels-
the same age.
feels like a match made in heaven. Do they actually have any interest in him? I have no idea. It just felt like maybe that could work to me. Again, 2 playoff role players. You're going to tell me that this is too much, maybe, again, based on the last trade. Would the Spurs give us Keldon Johnson and Zach Collins?
Oh, it's interesting. I don't think they would.
You don't think they would?
I don't think they'd give up Keldon Johnson for him. I don't know. Maybe.
Keldon Johnson is 23 years old. He makes $20 million next season. He's on a front-loaded contract. He's kind of the definition, in my opinion, of a guy who, I don't know, he averaged 22 points per game last year on a 22-win team. Let's put it like that.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't
he's
know.
definitely not. He's probably overpaid.
He does some
And he's not
interesting.
I wouldn't say he's on a great contract for his level of skill at this point.
He does some interesting things on the basketball court and has undeniable offensive talent. But even Greg Popovich, let's put it like this, even Greg Popovich has not quite found a way to refine Keldon Johnson's more boneheaded side. So I think he's a talented player, but I think there's enough flaws in that talent where maybe he's attainable in a move like this. I think if you could get him, he's a wing who I think would fit next to Durant and Booker.
Yeah.
Could play off ball.
He'd be really
could defend
good,
multiple positions.
He could in the small ball 5, he'd be an interesting option at that power forward, small power forward. Of course, he's not a tall player.
Could fill in.
I mean,
in
did
a
that
pinch.
with the team that played in the Olympics, right? With Devin Booker.
Yes, he did.
So they've played together before.
I forget that he was on that team. Okay. So yeah. And
I
then
like
Zach
it.
Collins. Zach Collins is a center. He shoots some
He's
threes.
fine.
He could start. To be honest, he wouldn't be a great starter, but he could start.
Yeah, he'd be fine. He's not good. he's not a good player, but he's not a terrible player either. If he's coming off your bench, he's okay.
If you're gonna reject this, maybe we can do a counteroffer, figuring out some other stuff on San Antonio's cap sheet. But
Like
to be
Doug
honest,
McDermott.
yeah, but the real selling point here is Keldon Johnson. So if you're
Yeah.
telling me straight up, I mean,
Yeah.
to me, if I'm the Spurs, Keldon Johnson is nice, but he's been in my program for 4 years.
Yeah, and
I
Vassell
think
is like the same position, kind of.
he's talented, but he has not proven himself. Excuse the stereotype or whatever, but has not proved himself to be a winning player at this point. Has not proved himself to be a centerpiece, honestly. Wembanyama comes in, and from day one, he's your centerpiece. Let's get him a point guard where the entire focus is going to be running 2-man actions now between
A
Chris
point
Paul
guard
and
who's
Victor
not going to
Wembanyama.
take shots from him, right?
Yeah, and who's gonna? I mean, Chris Paul will get his 15 points per game, but he's gonna be there's not a better point guard for Wemby coming out of the league.
I would love to watch that. That would be fun. I'd watch Chris Paul throwing lobs to Wemby. That'd be awesome. Yeah,
That's my proposal. Tell me if
I
it's
like it.
stupid. I don't know.
I mean,
whatever,
I like it
but
from the Spurs side. I don't know what they want or what they're planning on doing, but I don't think that would be bad
like, can't you
development
just
of Wemby to start.
the Spurs could make this trade, and because it's matching salaries on both sides, they could make this trade, have Chris Paul, Devin Vassell, and Wembanyama already in their starting lineup, and then still have $60 million in cap space to go out, plug in 2 more guys.
Right.
In my opinion, that could be, they would lose in the first round, but that could be a playoff team in year 1 for Wemby. It could be Chris Paul doing the OKC thing again. He could help reinvent, and that kind of feels like where his role would be to me in the NBA at this point. I think a lot of these contending teams, it's hard to convince them that Chris Paul can defend in the playoffs, which is why a lot of them would be afraid. But a lot of these teams who haven't found the top 10 superstar yet, who don't have that player where they don't want a Chris Paul taking the ball out of that player's hands, which is kind of the issue that the Suns currently have. A lot of those teams in the middle that are trying to make the playoffs could potentially welcome Chris Paul to be that cultural resetter, to do the exact same thing he did in OKC and arguably Phoenix.
I'm interested. I don't know. Like my first instinct, of course, was to say that the Spurs would reject it. I just don't know. I don't know much about what they actually want, and it makes sense for them to make their entire franchise about Wemby. But I think in a very Spurs kind of way, they maybe wouldn't want to do that. You know what I mean? They want to find the right way to make it about winning and winning only, and make sure that Wemby's focus is that. And maybe Chris Paul could help with that specific end goal. Want to hear one that you'll hate?
Yeah, let's do it.
76ers. James Harden leaves. They need a point guard.
Okay.
Chris Paul and Landry Shamet for Tobias Harris.
Chris Paul and Landry Shamet for Tobias Harris. Yikes. I don't know where to start with that. Why? Just why?
I don't know. Would they...
So
I'm
you
not
think
saying I would do it.
So
but I think they probably would, right?
Philly
he
was
has
not
1 year, $39 million left on his contract, for the record. So Tobias Harris obviously never going to make that kind of money again. And maybe they're looking at a situation where they've been trying to move off of him for a while. There is even a scenario where they just buy Chris Paul out on that money, and even Shamet, if they can, and try to move on from both of those guys with cap space. But it's just something that I threw out there because I thought, I bet they would do this. And that's it. I don't think it's a good trade.
Let me. Sorry, I'm looking at Tobias's stats, so I'm getting distracted. Yeah,
he's a fine player.
He's fine.
If he was making $20 million, I think you could say he's a good player on that contract. He's just making twice that much, so it's just not a good scenario.
Insane. And this is what's going to be interesting about the whole second apron and whatever in the NBA, right? Because like players like Tobias Harris making $35 to $40 million at where we currently are at in the NBA in its evolution is kind of insane.
Okay, I'll give you a more fun
to this point.
I'll give you a more fun one in that case, because that one was specifically, I just wanted to see your reaction. Sure. The Raptors are in a scenario with Fred VanVleet where he could leave for nothing. Now, of course, we've thrown out the idea of trading DeAndre Ayton for Fred VanVleet, but maybe they would consider Chris Paul. You know, there's, like I said, you either trade him in a sign and trade and get a player back, or you lose him for nothing. And, you know, I think Ayton would be a pretty good deal sweetener for them, but maybe we were thinking a little too big on that one. Maybe we should have thought more about the idea that maybe Chris Paul would be enough. And then they could have a point guard. I'm not sure what their goals are going to be next year. It'll be interesting to see who they hire as a coach if the Suns pick someone other than Kevin Young, for example, and Kevin Young ends up in Toronto. Maybe they'd want someone like Chris Paul. Or maybe even if they hire Steve Nash, maybe Steve Nash would want somebody like Chris Paul. And it's just a thought, because Fred VanVleet, you know, He's an unrestricted free agent if he doesn't pick up his player option.
What's the deal? It's a 1-for-1 straight up.
Yeah.
Van Vliet for Chris Paul. Does that work money wise?
I don't know what his max is. I don't think he's going to get it.
Okay.
So I guess it just depends on how you work it out. I didn't really necessarily work it out. I just put it on here as an option to talk about because I thought maybe we were thinking a little too big with DeAndre Ayton for him.
If the numbers work, if the money works, then that's great, right?
Like, it's like one of the best case scenarios you can think of, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a best case scenario for Phoenix because you get a guy who can defend and shoot threes and just play off ball next to both of those guys in basically a perfect role. As long as he's not making like $40 million on his next contract. Again, you're saying I don't know what Van Vliet's max number is.
Yeah,
because I
don't know that he would sign that, right? It'd be kind of insane if somebody signed him to a max, but maybe the Spurs will.
Yeah, they certainly could. Certainly could. Them or Houston or one of these other teams with a lot of money.
So I brought up Chris Paul 4.4 3-point attempts per game. Only Dennis Schroeder at 3.4 and SGA 2.5 attempts per game, which is insane, by the way, that Shea only shoots 2.5 attempts per game. The top of the league, the very, very top of the league, you know who the top of the league is for point guards. Steph Curry, 11.4. Damian Lillard, 11.3. Number 3 of starting point guards who played at least 50 games, played 30 minutes more per game. Fred VanVleet, 8.8 attempts per game last year. He just launches them. Third most of any starting point guard.
What did he shoot this year? Wasn't it? It was down?
It was down. It was
amount,
34%. Right? But 34% on 8.8 attempts per game is good.
34%. That's right around his layup percentage usually too.
This last year, yes. That's why you want him out there launching threes instead of 45% from 2. I'll just throw it out there, which is one of the worst of all these starting point guards is Fred VanVleet. I think it is the worst, actually.
Yeah. I mean, he's short and has short arms and not the most burst.
And Nick Nurse was not as good of a coach as people think.
Yeah, sure.
Just throw that out there. But yeah, I mean, I think it would be a really good fit for him and for the Suns. And it's just a thought because, like I said, he could just leave for nothing. And then the Raptors are left with nothing. The Raptors could even just sign Chris Paul and then with the intention of trading him later if they wanted to try to trade him at the deadline, if they can get something out of a team that's desperate for a point guard at that point. But it's just something that's a potential signing trade for him there.
I am completely into it if you could get it. So good work.
All right, what do you got?
Minnesota.
I got one of those too.
You do? All right.
Yeah, I thought I was being clever. Well, they're probably going to be drastically different now that we point this out, but let's see.
They might be. Let's start here. What the hell, Minnesota? Like what? Where did say
you're more surprised than me here?
No, I know, but like, say you're in that position to rebuild that team right now.
Yeah, good luck.
And talk about money issues going forward with the amount of money they have to commit to Cat and Gobert.
It's insane.
And Anthony Edwards.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
They might be hard capped going forward, and if they are, I don't know. It's kind of like, how do you make improvements?
Well, that's why it's actually a good year for Chris Paul. Yeah.
Other than shuffling the pieces they already have, because they can't bring in outside talent through free agency. If they get too close to that second apron number, that $179 million number, and you did point out earlier, we don't know exactly what the ramifications are going to be next season, but they could get to a point where they're hard capped and can no longer sign buyout candidates.
Well, that's the thing, right? Because Anthony Edwards is going to have to sign an extension soon. And so they have this time where he's still making less than he could have been. Right. If he was in an open market where maybe they could afford to pay somebody like Chris Paul.
So it comes to a point for Minnesota where you want to lock down Anthony Edwards. Obviously, you don't want to lose him. You don't want to lose Karl Anthony Towns, even though he's flawed. Rudy Gobert, I don't think you could get anything for him if you tried.
I don't know. Maybe you could trade Chris Paul for him.
What's your avenue to improve? You shuffle around the pieces you currently have. And it's tough, but maybe Chris Paul, they could talk themselves into Chris Paul being an answer next to those other three guys. Could you imagine Chris Paul and Rudy Gobert playing together?
Or Chris Paul and Cat. I think it actually works. Well, I think, look, it's not a perfect fit for any of these guys. But that's because they have two centers that play on that team. And if you're going to try to figure out a way to make a good team around Cat, these are the kinds of concessions that you have to make. So, yeah.
My trade is Chris Paul for Mike Conley and Taurean Prince.
That's exactly what I have.
Is it exactly what you have?
Yes, that's
Go
right.
us. Go us. We figured one out.
Yeah.
We're on the same page.
Do you
lock
love it
it in.
though? Because I don't love
No.
it.
No, I don't love it. I don't love it. But
I think you're just saying maybe Mike Conley will be healthy in the second round, where
well,
Chris Paul wouldn't be.
I think
right?
what I'm saying is Mike Conley is a bit more of a willing shooter than Chris Paul is.
Yeah.
And Taurean Prince is a playable role player that we currently otherwise wouldn't have.
He would have played on the Suns against the Nuggets, probably.
Yeah, but
which doesn't
also,
say much, but
he's not great.
Yeah.
Are you sure that Taurean Prince is better than Torrey Craig? Because I'm not.
No, I'm not. I'm definitely not.
He is another Torrey Craig-esque player. Is that enough to make me really want to do this deal?
Yeah, I know. It's exactly how I feel because, like, I think there is. I tried to make the case, you'll remember, at the beginning of last season, for using some salary to try to trade for Mike Conley to be your backup point guard and try to convince him to be your backup point guard so that when Chris Paul went down in the playoffs, which he inevitably did, you could use Mike Conley as the starting point guard at that point. Just because he's more durable. That's not to say that he hasn't been injured. He still has been, and he is old. Like, we could potentially be running into all the same problems as you have with Chris Paul. He's expiring. I will give him that as well. It's not like he's going to be years and years of a problem. It's similar to Chris Paul in that way as well. But yeah, he's got a quicker trigger as far as shooting. He's willing to shoot in fast breaks. Just a faster shot in general. A better three-point shooter at most of his career than Chris Paul. And, you know, does he have the juice left defensively that you kind of would hope? Probably not. You know, I think you would still need a pretty good backup guard to come up for him if he's injured in the regular season as well. But yeah, I came up with the same thing, and if only because I think that the Timberwolves would do that. Like, for sure, I think they would do that. And, you know, maybe you could even get something else out of them. I don't know. They don't have any picks left, so I don't know what else you could get. But, like, if they really need discipline in that locker room, they really need some sort of voice of reason in that locker room, Chris Paul could potentially be really good for him in the same way that he was really good for the Suns. And people want to pretend like that's not true. They can think back to what the Suns were before that and remember, and he made a difference. And I could see them really doing this. And I could actually see him being really good for them too. It's an interesting one.
To me, it's the definition of like a 5 out of 10 trade for the Suns. It's just like I could talk myself, if it happened, into the value. But I'm not going to be excited about it. I do think it's funny that we both threw out the exact same one, though. It just makes sense for the Wolves.
It does.
Like, what? Because what the hell else are they going to do?
Yeah. I think that's a team that could actually be in on Chris Paul. You know, like
they could trade Cat.
They could trade Cat. They could trade Gobert. Like if we wanted to really come up with an option,
they could trade Gobert for what?
Chris Paul and Landry Shamet. You know, like we'll just say
I
that.
would
Chris
not.
Paul and
I wouldn't do it.
Neither would I think. But like I could see them trying to do that.
Yeah, sure. They're married to that. That Gobert deal is going to haunt them.
Yeah, you know, as far as owners coming in and making trades, man, Matt Ishbia gets a lot of flack for trading for one of the greatest players ever. And those guys in Minnesota, who is it, A-Rod or whoever, they don't take enough flack for how awful that trade was, which is right after they bought the team.
Yeah.
Insane. How about from the Lakers, Malik Beasley and Mo Bamba?
I threw in, because I have a version of this trade as well, where I threw in Jared Vanderbilt, but are you telling me that that's not possible?
I mean, I definitely stared at that for a while. Because like we're talking Malik Beasley, it's not giving up much, but he would be a good player for the Suns. You know, it's not like we're asking them to give up a ton for Chris Paul here. So maybe you could convince them to give up Jared Vanderbilt in that. And if you get him, then yes, you do it. I think you do it for Malik Beasley and Vanderbilt.
There's something absolutely hilarious about the Lakers trading for Chris Paul. Finally, their forgotten jewel that they've searched, their white whale for so long, in 2023 when he's 38 years old. It would be very amusing. So you had Malik
Beasley, Vanderbilt, and Bamba, or no Bamba as part of this one?
I have Malik Beasley, Vanderbilt, and Mo Bamba because it still works.
Because Vanderbilt makes like $3 million.
Because Vanderbilt makes like $3 or $4 million.
It's so crazy to see his contract.
All right, well, okay, so let's start with just Beasley and Bamba. You would do that? I wouldn't.
I don't think so.
Because I don't
not
trust.
Very good.
Bamba is not good, and I don't trust. He's fine, but I don't trust.
I'd be happy
enough.
with Beasley. You know, like as that, but I think you would need like a playable player alongside of him to make it work. He's not better than Chris Paul, Malik Beasley. You know what I mean? Like Chris Paul's bringing more to a team than Malik Beasley at this point.
If you give me Vanderbilt, I do it because then I know I'm getting 2 rotation players, and maybe Bamba can do something for me.
Maybe, I mean, Bamba's a nice, if you figure out something to trade later, he's a nice salary range, like $10 million, where maybe you could trade him later too. You know, it's not that he'd have to show something, of course, but
it's just the Lakers are in an awkward position because they sort of got their ass kicked in the sense that they got swept, but they didn't get their ass kicked in the sense that actually all the games were really close. But
and they performed better than anyone anticipated they were going to.
They did, and yet because it's Los Angeles,
yeah, the pressure's on.
The pressure's on, and because it's one of LeBron's last years, like I feel like they need to do something, but I don't know what that something is going to be.
Honestly, if they're going to do a farewell season for LeBron, throw Chris Paul in there. Do a double farewell season. Let them both go all over the country waving at fans for the last time as the lights go out. It sounds great. Let's watch it.
Give him.
Why not?
Wait, Udonis Haslam just retired officially, right? Or he's going to retire officially when the Heat are done this year?
Yeah.
I was going to say, give him
Which
Udonis
just means he's
Haslam
changing
too.
his jersey for a suit, I imagine.
Yeah.
And still sitting in the same spot on the bench.
Who's the third oldest active player in the NBA at this point? After those 2 guys.
That's a good. Is it Kevin Durant? No, I'm kidding.
Might be, honestly.
It's probably pretty close.
Might be.
After those 3 guys, PJ Tucker? PJ Tucker's older than LeBron, I think, isn't he?
Or okay, I'm trying to think about it in terms of draft class. LeBron was 03.
PJ
Chris
Tucker's
Paul was
38.
04. And PJ Tucker was 06, his draft class.
Yeah,
Trying to think if there's anyone still from like 04, 05. I don't think so. Might be PJ Tucker. And after him, it would be Kevin Durant and Jeff Green in 07.
Wow. Yeah. That's crazy. All right,
next team?
I guess more. Yeah.
Okay. I only got like 2 more. So
I got 2. Yeah, I got 3 more, and they're not great.
Give me a joke one. Let's lighten it up.
Okay. Davis Bertans and Reggie Bullock.
Yeah. Next.
If they lose Kyrie Irving and the Mavs still want a point guard, I could just see a world. Bertans is like a negative at his contract. You know, like he's not a bad player, but he's getting paid way too much, and then maybe you can get Reggie Bullock with him. It's just a thought.
Can I be honest though? Like part of this is, and I know Chris Paul is not, he's not a Nash-esque figure in Suns history. He's not a Booker-esque figure, you know, but like I still very much have appreciated Chris Paul's 3 years in Phoenix, and I want to do well by him, but I also want to be able to root for him to wherever he goes next. I could even root for him on the Lakers next to LeBron James doing the farewell tour, by the way. I could even do that. I don't think I could root for Chris Paul, Luka Doncic backcourt. I'm sorry, I could not do it.
Come on.
I could not
They're
do
made
it.
for each other, those 2 guys. Come on.
I could not do it. I'm so sorry.
right,
but also, I don't like that trade very much.
Yeah, that
Utah.
one was sort of a joke one, because although I could see it.
My next team is the Utah Jazz.
Interesting.
Are they on your list?
They are not.
Feel like they're going to say no to this. But we got to negotiate from a place of strength. So let's see. The Utah Jazz are one of those other teams that I was talking about, kind of could just use a Chris Paul figure basically to do the OKC thing all over again, to propel them into the playoffs. They almost made it this year already. Maybe they're ready next year. They've got Walker Kessler, who Utah Jazz fans seem, pun intended, really jazzed about. Sorry, they've got Lauri Markkanen, who's the star of their team. It's kind of a similar concept to the Spurs, actually, in that it's like, okay, Lowry's our star. Let's just get a point guard who's going to set him up and get him the ball. And Chris Paul could do that.
Yeah.
What do you think they say to Chris Paul for Colin Sexton and Kelly Olynyk?
Oh. I think they say no.
That's okay. Well, it was worth trying because how awesome would that be in theory,
It would be
right?
really awesome.
Colin Sexton comes in. I think he's got some issus again.
You think it's starting both of these guys, basically?
No, I would rather not. If I'm acquiring Colin Sexton, I still want a real point guard because he's not a real point guard. But I essentially view him as maybe the best 6 man in the league.
Yeah, he's like J.R. Smith for us or something.
If you could convince him to take that role, he could come in and be an incredible 6 man. And then Olynyk, yes, I think Olynyk could be a starter. Are there some defensive concerns here and there? Sure, but he spaces the floor. He's basically a supercharged Frank Kaminsky in terms of what he can do for the Suns.
And he's like a little bit dirty, which you kind of need.
Yeah, he's got real offensive chops, real playmaking chops. Could be a great guy to like kill double teams against Booker or Durant or kill a zone. You just have Kelly Olynyk playmaking from the elbow. Would be awesome.
Then you hire Jordy Fernandez.
And then you hire Jordy Fernandez, and suddenly Kelly Olynyk is averaging 20, 10, and 10. We have our own Jokic. I would really like this trade if we could get it. Let me pull up their contracts real quick, see if there's... So you're saying just straight up no? You think they say no?
But I was trying to think about a way to maybe adjust it, and I don't really see one.
Yeah, there's not an easy adjustment.
Counter, yeah. They'd have to really like Chris Paul. Because all I know is Danny Ainge supposedly loves Kelly Olynyk. And, you know, that means
tracks.
Something. Yeah.
What we know about Danny Ainge, to be honest, that tracks. But I don't know. I think Kelly Olynyk is good. I think Colin Sexton is good. But
here's what I'll say. If James Jones pulled that off, I would be so happy. I would be amazed. And it's not like, I know that I think you're right in the way that you sort of framed how good Chris Paul is and that he's still really good. And that I'm not valuing him in these trades as a very good player in a lot of ways. So, you know, maybe someone does, though. Maybe it's possible a team actually still does. And that's what it would take to pull off a trade like that. Because, like, value-wise, Chris Paul's better than both of those guys, for sure, in this next season. Like, without a doubt. Yeah. He's more valuable to a team than those two guys.
I'm seeing here, as I look at Utah's cap sheet, Jordan Clarkson, who's 30 years old, has a $14.3 million player option. Do we think he's declining that?
I don't know, actually. Will he make more than that?
I don't know. I really have no idea.
I doubt it. Maybe he can pull off. I mean, maybe he can get more.
Would you do this trade? Would you do this trade? Because Clarkson is a downgrade from Sexton, but is still the same archetype of player. This is part of the problem with Utah's roster construction. They have two of the exact same guys there. Would you do this trade if it was Clarkson and Olynyk?
That's pretty fascinating. I probably would.
I would.
This is just and like I think it's actually kind of in some ways doing Chris Paul a little dirty because Chris Paul is still more valuable than those guys in the regular season. But if he gets injured in the playoffs again, you can't really just give $30 million for a guy who's not going to be there in the playoffs. At some point, you have to factor that in. And maybe that's why I value him differently too, because I'm factoring that in, whereas other teams might not. Because the Jazz are not trying to win a championship next year. Being good would be good for them. Yeah, that would be really good for them. So yeah, it's a different case, different scenario. I probably still would do that. Yeah, I wouldn't be happy about it. I would feel bad for Chris Paul.
So would I.
But you know what? I have DeLon Wright, Kendrick Nunn, and Daniel Gafford as one of my trades. So.
Just choked on some water. Okay, wait. I'm sorry. Repeat that. Daniel Gafford, DeLon Wright, and
Kendrick Nunn.
Kendrick. How much money does Kendrick Nunn make?
Enough to make the trade work.
Okay,
because that's why he's there. That's the only reason he's there.
I would do it. This is a modification. Sorry, it's a modification. Yeah, of the Ayton. Who was the third player in my Ayton trade last week? I think it was Corey Kispert.
Corey Kispert, yeah.
Which
I left out because
Nunn.
I thought maybe they wouldn't do that. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Just throwing it out there. Gafford is an interesting player where like I wonder if he would be better on a good team where his role is a little bit smaller. He just has to protect the rim, set screens, and roll. And, you know, maybe because he's a good shot blocker, like a really good shot blocker. Mm-hmm. Not the fastest as far as moving his feet laterally, but it's just an interesting one. Throwing it out there.
Sure.
Do you have any more? I have one more.
I've got one more. It's kind of a bullshit one. I'm
okay,
not
what
lie.
is it?
I was just thinking about how, like, what you need Chris Paul to be for some team is basically, like, what the Heat have right now in Kyle Lowry.
Right, okay.
Now, Kyle Lowry has kind of struggled. He's an imperfect version of this. He struggled a lot in this series against the Celtics, actually. But I was thinking to myself, like, if the Heat get bounced tonight, and this game is about to happen, we're about to watch it, I don't know. Would you do Lowry in the 18th pick for Chris Paul? It's almost a one-for-one swap.
No, I don't think so.
You wouldn't?
I don't think so.
Lowry's just a worse
Lowry
version
would have
of
been
Paul,
better than
but
Paul.
He's not significantly worse.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I like Lowry's defense more. I think he's more of a plus defender.
I just think ultimately the 18th pick I wanted one trade in here and as an example of could we get a draft asset?
Yeah,
but I
that's
would
not
actually
bad.
think
It's not bad.
The 18th pick doesn't actually get you. It's no guarantee at like a playoff rotation.
Well,
player
you can
in year
use
one.
that 18th pick to attach to Landry Shamet and
That's true.
Cameron Payne now.
That's true.
And try to get something with those
and
guys.
probably get something. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not terrible. I don't actually hate that one. I'd consider it, actually. But in a similar way, I came up with one to the Pelicans. This is my last one, too.
This one is to personally torture the Pelicans beat writers who are very mean to Chris Paul when they shouldn't be.
But you know who loves him? Willie Green.
Willie Green. Great point.
Close friends, those guys. Close friends. And I actually think he'd be good for them. And I think I figured out a way to do it in a way that they might actually do it, which is Valanciunas again, because you need his salary. Kira Lewis Jr., who barely played for them last year.
Yeah, it kind of sucks.
And kind of sucks, yeah. And Garrett Temple. It's interesting, right?
How is Garrett Temple 37 years old and in the NBA?
He's 37.
Props to Garrett Temple,
I did
dude.
not realize that.
I'm
Look, I'm just
looking
trying
at
to.
his player page.
I wrote it initially as Valanciunas and stuff, because that's what it is.
Yeah, it's just Valanciunas and stuff.
Yeah,
That's fine. Valanciunas, and then you need to just trade Ayton for a guard, right?
yeah. I mean, you'd have to get Fred VanVleet. You'd have to get somebody good to be the other ball handler. This team needs more ball handlers still, even with Chris Paul and Devin Booker. And I think you could do a lot of offense with Valanciunas in the way that Suns fans wanted the Suns to do with Ayton, whereas Valanciunas is kind of better at just posting up and scoring and getting fouled and stuff. I think you could do a lot of that, like with bench lineups, still and get away with it. But it's not great, and he's not a great player. Like he's just he's like a perfectly average starting center. Yeah,
Do you know
that's
that
all it
Garrett?
is.
Do you know that Garrett Temple was an undrafted guy? Started his career in 2009.
That's why he's older than we anticipated. I'm guessing.
Do you want to guess how many teams he's played for?
I'm gonna say 7.
12.
Holy shit! Why is he signed multiple years?
The Pelicans were Garrett Temple's 12th season. And in just the past few years, just since 2018, he's played for Memphis, LA, Brooklyn, Chicago, and New Orleans.
Wow.
My God. The life of an NBA journeyman, people. It is not as easy as you think. Yes, he still made millions of dollars, but that is tough.
As with the last episode, I'm sure there's a lot of different trades that we did not even think of. We would like to hear your options for trades as well, or your thoughts on some of the ones that we gave out as well. Some of them, like I said, with varying degrees of seriousness. And this is more than anything for me. This was an exercise in trying to figure out what his value is, and I still have yet to figure it out. It's going to be different things for different teams. We'd love to hear what you think. Add them in the replies to the tweet when we tweet out this podcast, or send it to us on our Patreon, Discord, Reddit, whatever you want to do. And we'll read those out on our Patreon episode midweek to see if we find any other good ones. On that Patreon episode, there's a good chance we're going to be reacting to a new coach, Sam, very soon.
I'm looking forward to it.
The fact that we waited to record this till Monday almost guaranteed that it was going to happen Tuesday morning. So congratulations to Kevin Young, we assume. But thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode. We appreciate you. We're going to go watch Game 7 right now. I'm sure you're watching it already. And we'll be back midweek or sooner with a reaction to the coach's hiring. Thanks, everyone.